Welcome to the KontinuumLAB. This is the second half of the KLIK version 2 introduction. The KLIK or KontinuumLAB instrument kit, as the name suggests, is a kit for making instruments, specifically electronic musical instruments. It's super easy to use. It has onboard synths and audio as well as MIDI output, and it comes pre-programmed with 8 different instruments that you can make right out of the box. You can buy the KLIK version 2 over at KontinuumLAB.com. Let's get started.
My name is Jeppe. I'm a musician turned maker, and now I use electronics, coding, 3D printing and lots of cardboard to make MIDI controllers and musical instruments. You can buy the electronics I use over at KontinuumLAB.com. Link in the description. In the last video I covered the quick start guide that comes with the kit. We learned some things about capacitive sensors, we made a simple wind instrument, and we saw how we can choose between the different KLIK instruments by inserting some jumpers on the KLIK breakout board. So let's build on that by quickly going through the rest of the wind instruments you can make. There's some general information in the first video on how the KLIK works and how to use it, so if you feel like I'm not giving you all the necessary information in this video, you should go back and have a look at the previous one. Link in the description. Okay, let's get on with it. Hang on to your hats, this is going to be fast. First of all, the keys for all of these basic wind instruments are made using exactly the same techniques as we saw in the last video. The main structure of each instrument is also similar, made from corrugated cardboard, so I won't go into too much detail about that. Instead, let's have a look at the different options for KLIK wind instruments. First, the recorder. The KLIK recorder has 8 keys, which is the full capacity of the key header on the breakout board. The key connected to pin number 1 is the octave key, which lowers the pitch by an octave when you press it. You can download a chart with all the specific fingerings from the KontinuumLAB homepage. The recorder is put together pretty much like the ocarina that we saw in the last video, including the same kind of keys, mouthpiece and breath sensor. So have a look at that video for further details about the construction. One thing I didn't mention in the last video is that you can actually add a capacitive pitch bend sensor to the ocarina, and the same goes for this recorder. So let's see how that works. On the KLIK ocarina, you connect the pitch bend sensor to key pin number 4. But on the recorder, all the key pins are already occupied, so you need to use this pin here, which is part of the connector for the multiplexer that we use for other instruments that have more than 8 keys. In order to activate pitch bend in the software for these instruments, you need to insert a pin in the option header on the KLIK breakout board, right here. Then reset by unplugging the power and plugging back in. The way pitch bend works is simply by putting your finger on it, and it gradually activates the pitch bend. The ocarina and recorder only have one pitch bend sensor, and it bends the pitch down. But if we look at the most complex of the KLIK wind instruments, the clixyphone, it actually has 2 of these sensors, so you're able to bend both up and down. And speaking of the clixyphone, let's have a look at that. It's basically the same as these other ones except for the number of keys. So the clixyphone has 13 main keys and 3 octave keys. This means that we need to use one of the multiplexer modules. The way that works is pretty simple. We plug the module in on this header here using the 8-pin cable that comes with the kit, making sure to connect ground to ground, and then we connect the keys to the module the same way we do on the KLIK breakout board. Of course, you can make the KLIK instruments any shape you like, and in this case I went for a vaguely saxophone-shaped body. But here is another example. I just changed the shape and materials, but the electronics inside are exactly the same. It's really the same instrument. Notice how I put the pitch bend sensors on the mouthpiece in this case. Now this is really cool because it allows me to control pitch bend like this. Of course, the capacitive sensors don't care if they're activated by a finger or a lip, as long as they have an insulating layer on top. In this case, I'm using some transparent plastic that I recycled from a food container. There's a circular hole in the center of this, which fits snugly around this silicone tube so the capacitive sensor doesn't get wet. Anyway, that's a bit advanced and not really necessary. Plus, I have other videos on the channel which show how to do that. You saw in the previous video how easy it is to make a basic mouthpiece, so let's stick with that for now. Okay, just one wind instrument left in the KLIK collection, and that's the trumpet. Again, the breath sensor and mouthpiece is basically the same as for the others, and the keys are put together the same. But this time there are just 3 of them. As you can see, I decided to put the body together with these holes here, so that I can hold the instrument more or less like a real trumpet. In the basic setup, the KLIK trumpet switches register by overblowing. So as you blow harder, it will skip up a fifth and then another fifth. But just like the other instruments, it has an optional setting, activated by inserting a jumper in the Alt header on the breakout board. And on the trumpet, that changes the register changes to a capacitive sensor on key pin number 4. I put it inside this hole here, and I used my index finger, which just seemed like a practical solution. Of course, if you want to get really fancy, you could use this capacitive sensor to make a MIDI brass mouthpiece, like I've shown in some previous videos. You can take a look at those for more info.
Nice.
But right now, we still have a couple of more instruments to cover. But before we get to that, there's something I haven't mentioned at all. Like you saw in the previous video, all of these instruments have a MIDI mode, which is what I'm using right now, and an audio mode, which outputs audio through the mini jack plug on the KontinuumLAB instrument kit breakout board. But what makes the audio mode extra cool is that the KLIK can also be powered with batteries. In the kit, you'll find included this battery holder for 4 AAA batteries, which you can use with NIMH or standard alkaline cells. It plugs straight into the KLIK board, and now you have a standalone instrument that you can take with you wherever. Plug in the included earbuds and you're good to go. Okay, enough about that. Let's look at the KLIK keyboard. This is a pretty simple setup really, with 16 keys going from the note B and up to D. These sensors of course come in through a multiplexer, which I already showed you how to connect. And these other 2 sensors over here on the side are the pitch bend sensors. They work just like the classic keyboard joystick in that you can modulate down and up by sliding or twisting your finger along the 2 sensors. These connect to the key pins 1 and 2. The optional function on this instrument is quite interesting. At the default setting, the keys respond like any old piano key. It starts a note when you hit it, and it's velocity sensitive, so the note is louder the harder or faster you hit it. But if you insert a jumper into the Alt header, that changes completely. Now the volume is controlled continuously by measuring how much you're touching the keys, so you can fade notes and chords on and off like this. Just like for all the wind instruments, the volume signal, if you're using MIDI, is on CC number 7, so you'll need a synth that accepts that signal. Okay, just 2 more instruments to go. Let's start with the membrane percussion, which is super simple, and then we'll finish on the KLIK string instrument, which is probably the most interesting one. The percussion features 4 drums, which use the same kind of setup as the breath sensors on the KLIK wind instruments. So a balloon membrane is stretched across a cylindrical structure, and the deflection of each membrane is measured through one of the CNY70 sensor modules, which come with the KontinuumLAB instrument kit. Unlike the KLIK capacitive percussion, the membrane percussion is velocity sensitive. So if you hit it harder, you'll get a louder output or higher velocity reading on your MIDI signal. Or if you insert a jumper into the Alt header on the KLIK breakout board to activate the optional function, you'll get continuous control of the volume. So you can do a vibrato, for example, on a long cymbal sound. Or you can cut off sounds at will instead of waiting for the end of the sample. Okay, And now the final one. Let's have a look at the string instrument. First off, let's talk about the optional function, which in this case affects the fundamentals of the kind of instrument you're building. Without the alt jumper inserted, the KLIK wind instrument is tuned like a ukulele. And so you'll want to make a smallish instrument with less distance between the strings, like this one. The other option activates bass tuning, and so you'll be better off making an instrument with a bit more space between the strings and so on, like this one. Okay, so how does it work? Well, all the sensors are capacitive like on many of the other KLIK instruments, but in this case the sensors are simply made in a different shape. One option that I like is to use matches with copper tape rolled around them, like on this instrument here. Or even simpler is this ukulele prototype here, which uses paper clips. The great thing about paper clips is that if you get them in the right size, they can be plugged straight into a DuPont cable, like this. And so after that you just need to cover them with a bit of tape and you're good to go. You can also make a more elaborate structure with the cardboard and copper tape, like here. This connects by contacting underneath with a thumbtack plugged into a DuPont cable. You could even 3D print a basic structure for the string sections like you see here. The way you play this instrument is just like a real string instrument. You mark the note or chord on the fretboard and then you activate the 4 string sensors here to play the notes. Keep in mind, these sensors activate when you let them go, so to speak, like this. They are very fast and will work just fine even when strumming. And based on the pressure that you apply, or more accurately on the amount of finger that touches them as you prepare to activate each sensor, the output will be louder.
And so that covers all of the 8 instruments that you can make using the KontinuumLAB Instrument Kit version 2. Now there are a couple of things that I didn't mention much in this video, even though they are super important aspects which all of the different instruments share. And that's simply because I covered them in some detail in the previous video. Stuff like calibration, audio versus MIDI mode, and so on. So do go check out that video if you missed that. And don't forget, you can buy your very own KLIK version 2 over at www.KontinuumLAB.com. Take care until next time, and I'll see you in the Kontinuum.